So another topic that they love to ask about is water pollution. And under the domain of water pollution, we usually talk about eutrophication. And I will write that out step by step. But just to let you know, there's actually two different major parts of water pollution. So the first one is sewage. You can have raw sewage being dumped into a waterway, or you can have different minerals from fertilizers. So nitrates and phosphates would be the two big ones. Now, these both can cause eutrophication, and that's a major issue. All right, like I said, I'll walk you through eutrophication. But the other thing that you want to keep in mind with the sewage is that you're going to have lots of pathogens in there. There's going to be, if you think about what comes out of not just humans but animals and things like that, the feces that comes out is going to have lots and lots of possible pathogens in it, and so it could make people sick or other organisms sick or things like that. So in addition to everything I'm about to write for eutrophication, that you definitely want to keep in mind for sewage, there's the added problem of pathogens that would be present. All right. And so, but so eutrophication, this is the key thing of what happens to water. I'm going to walk you through the steps, and then I'll talk about kind of how sewage is slightly different but similar process. All right, so minerals from fertilizers such as nitrates and phosphates. The problem is that, for example, if you have a field and you put a bunch of that fertilizer on it that has a lot of nitrates, and then it rains, if the nitrates haven't had time to be taken up by the plant roots, then they get the water is going to pick them up, they're going to dissolve in the water, and they're going to go into the nearest waterway, and that's going to cause eutrophication. All right, and eutrophication is basically, there's kind of they love to ask 5 or 6 point questions about this. So the idea is that the first thing that happens is those nitrates, of course, are much beloved by plants, right? That's what they used to grow. And so you get a large increase in the number of plants or algae, and you get, so I'll say excess mineral ions cause, you could say extreme plant growth, but I like to talk about the algal bloom to keep it clear later, okay? So an algal bloom is literally a bloom of algae on the surface of a pond or a lake or a river, all right? And so the algae basically form a really thick layer on the top of the pond, and that blocks the light from being able to penetrate into the water. So it blocks light. Oops. And that is going to decrease the photosynthesis that the plants actually in the water can do. That means that the algae and the plants then soon start to die because the fertilizer runs out, and now they can't do photosynthesis. So the plants and the algae die. And what happens to things that are dead? They get decomposed, right? And so we're mainly talking about bacteria. So the dead organisms are decomposed, usually by bacteria. And the key is that these are aerobic bacteria. And that's key because if the idea is that you're decreasing the photosynthesis, you've got a bunch of plants that are dying. So you're decreasing the photosynthesis, and you've got aerobic bacteria that are replicating, and they're using oxygen. So overall, both of these things together, what happens is that the amount of oxygen in the water plunges, absolutely goes down. So the O2 availability in the water decreases drastically. And sometimes if it's really bad, then this is called anoxic, literally, right? Like anaerobic, there's no oxygen or no nothing. And of course, if you don't have oxygen in the water, then that means that you're now going to get the animals, the fish and things that live in the water that need that oxygen are going to die. And so you get basically an area of the water where nothing is living now because you've got dead plants and you've got animals that have died. So that's eutrophication. Now, usually we talk about it from minerals from fertilizers, but sewage does the same thing. Sewage may not have minerals, but it does have a lot of rich organic material. And so rather than for sewage, maybe you don't want to say excess mineral ions, but you could say excess organic materials, and that's still going to be a lovely availability of all these things that either allows the algae to grow, or all these organic materials are going to get decomposed by the aerobic bacteria. And so either way, the end result is the same. Either way, you're having a decrease in oxygen availability and the animals that are present there will die, okay? But whether that's due to the organic materials directly from the sewage that gets decomposed, or from all of the stuff that causes an algae bloom, which then decreases photosynthesis and causes aerobic bacteria to do decomposition, it doesn't really matter, but that's the idea, all right? So that's your eutrophication, and that's your water and water pollution.